So orcs are not going to be in the new 2025 monster manual, one of the most common staple monsters of the game since its inception, and they have been moved over to being a player character race now, or species as they're called in the new book. Now, there still are generic NPCs in the new monster manual, and they could be any race, so they could be an orc or human or elf or whatever you want them to be, but there's no specific orc type stat block in the new monster manual. In a way, we shouldn't be surprised because we've seen the trend of things going this way for quite a long time now, and none of the other player character races are in the monster manual. And on the other hand, it is kind of surprising and scandalous because it's the orc, one of the most prevalent staple monsters of D&D. I made a video a couple of years ago called What Are Orcs? And it was a really interesting experience for me going through the history of this creature and trying to get at what exactly they are. And really what I learned through that process is that orc actually is kind of a vague term. It's not really this very well-defined creature like we sometimes think it is through playing D&D or other games. The first official record we have of it is from the epic poem Beowulf, which the oldest manuscript of probably comes from like the year 1000. So this is Old English, Anglo-Saxon. They're only mentioned one time, just in the plural orcneus, and the meaning is not clear. There's debate about it, whether it meant sea monsters or creatures from the underworld like evil spirits or undead, or maybe even giants, kind of like Grendel who lives out in the bogs. Then orc kind of gets used in different ways throughout time. In the Renaissance and late Middle Ages and early modern age, it starts to blend more in with ogre, so this like big, brutish, giant kin type thing. But regardless, it was always this other type of being. It wasn't like a race in the world. It was from the realm of myth and fairy tale. So essentially it's like spirits, like how elves and dwarves and such things really were more like spirits, something more like an angel, a demon, or a djinn. It's Tolkien really who is the one who takes these fairy tale and mythological spirit creatures and incarnates them, makes them actual like fully flesh living races in the world. A lot of people, especially younger people, actually don't know this. Tolkien is the one who took these creatures and brought them out of the realm of myth and made them more of an actual, living, breeding, has a culture, like people that exist in the world. And even if you look at Tolkien's descriptions of the orcs, he uses many different descriptions. In The Hobbit, he says they're essentially goblins. They're shorter things, they're scrawnier, they're not really big or as strong as a person. They just live in dark places, underground, in caves. They're very foul, they hate the sunlight. They could be yellowish, greenish, blackish, grayish, right? There are all these different tones and hues, but regardless of the hue, their skin is always this mottled, sallow, gross, grotesque kind of skin. They're very monstrous, ugly things. They were created by the evil god Morgoth. Well, essentially an evil god. Maybe he's more like a demon lord. And then, of course, they continue all throughout the Lord of the Rings as one of the major types of enemies that the protagonists fight. And Saruman breeds the Uruk-hai, which are sort of like a half-orc. They're much bigger, stronger, and they do well in sunshine. They don't loathe the light, so they go out marching out in the open. So really, Tolkien's descriptions are quite varied, and you can even see this in Ralph Bakshi's animated movie, Lord of the Rings. A very flawed but interesting movie. In a way, I have to wonder if D&D screwed up in trying to make the orc such a narrowly defined creature. And the same thing happens with goblins and many other types of creatures that really, if we look at their roots in mythology, folklore, and literature, they have quite a variety of different characteristics, appearances, some common traits, of course, but they're not so narrowly defined and narrowly depicted. So is it a good thing or a bad thing that D&D has moved the orcs out of the monster manual into the player's handbook? No longer really a monster, but more of a character species. So there's all kinds of opinions about this. I've been hearing different perspectives on all sides of the issue. But one person's opinion who I have not gotten on this issue yet is my wife. And it's always a good idea to listen to your wife's opinion on things, even if her opinion is wildly incorrect. So I'm going to bring her on. She doesn't know what we're going to talk about. She doesn't really know much about D&D and stuff. and let's just get her candid reaction. Welcome on my channel. This is the first time you've been in one of my YouTube videos.
Right? I don't even know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, I didn't tell her what we're even talking about. So it's something related to Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Yeah. And how much do you know about Dungeons and Dragons?
Very little bit.
Yeah, very little.
Almost nothing.
She's about the least gamer person in the world. Okay,
Yes.
so do you remember we watched Lord of the Rings, those movies?
Yes, I remember.
And do you remember the orcs?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what do you remember of the orcs?
Well, there are a lot of monsters in that movie, but I remember they are strong. Is that one that are strong? They look like human and the monsters together. I guess.
Yeah, those things.
They are pretty scary.
Yeah, they're very scary monster things. All right, so orcs have been in Dungeons and Dragons since the very beginning of the game. It's like one of the most common kinds of monsters. All right, so I'm going to show you some Dungeons and Dragons images of orcs. So
Yeah.
this is just kind of a general image. What do you think about these?
They are pretty wild and look very strong. Seems very strong and ugly.
Wild, strong, and ugly?
Yeah. Well, they are definitely are very scary.
So that's just kind of a general...
Look like violent. Very violent.
Yeah, very violent. So here are some of the orcs from Lord of the Rings
Super
that we
ugly.
watched. Yeah, very ugly. These are Dungeons and Dragons images. This is the old school image of the orcs. So they started off like this.
Okay, look like more horse.
Horse?
No.
Hog?
What
Like
is-
pig.
Oh yeah, kind of.
Yeah, kinda like pig.
That's true. Yeah,
All right.
that's true.
Here's the second edition orc.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still kind of looks like the same creature. All right, here's the third edition orc. A little different, but pretty much the same. You think so?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the fourth edition orc.
Oh, they definitely are very more like look like violent and strong.
Here is the fifth edition orc. Still kind of similar, but a little, what would you say? A little cleaner now?
Yes.
In Dungeons and Dragons, there's like the player's book that you use to make your character. And then there's the monster book that has monsters that you might encounter during the adventures. The new D&D, the orcs are not in the monster book anymore. They're in the player book.
Oh, okay.
And this is what they look like now.
Oh my God, that's so different. What? Doesn't like look like more like human people. And look like funny and regular people. They just have these big teeth. Well, are you sure it's this new one?
Look.
Do you have more pictures?
Yeah, there would be some more pictures of them in here. I can find.
Like it was like very, very different.
Yeah. Here's one.
Oh my! Don't look. Don't even. How to say that? Sorry, I'm Brazilian. I'm still learning English.
Doesn't even look like the same thing.
Yeah, I thought it's another category. Very
So,
like they are
more
not too
like-
scary anymore.
They look more just like people,
Yeah,
but their skin is like a very light gray. And they have a
Yeah.
little bit of teeth.
and it doesn't look like too scary like the other ones.
Yeah. So traditionally in D&D, the orcs are evil creatures. They're created by like an evil god, kind of like almost a demon god. And they're violent. They like to cause pain. They like to destroy things. They eat people.
Ugh.
They're very terrible creatures.
Yeah.
Like from Lord of the Rings. It's very much inspired by Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I was pretty scared when I was Lord of the Rings. They are so strong.
Yeah. And also they're kind of stupid. They're not totally stupid, but they're less intelligent than a human. So there's been a change in the perspective in D&D and also in the players, largely because of this game, World of Warcraft. Have you heard of this game, World of Warcraft?
Never.
Extremely popular online video game.
Oh.
Millions and millions of people have played it. It's been around for like 20 years now.
Oh, okay.
So in this game, they made orcs these green people, and they are a player race that you can play as. And they're not totally evil. They have some evil part, but they also have some good part too. They're kind of a mixture of both. And they have more culture. They're not exactly stupider, maybe a little bit, but they still have like technology and cities and a lot of crafting and stuff. So largely because of this game, orc kind of changed to be more of a player character race.
Oh.
And so D&D, and a lot of people, not everyone, but a number of people who play it, they think that it is now wrong to say that the orcs are all evil or they're all stupid, and it's offensive to people. And so they've moved it from the monsters to the players. And they don't have any penalty to their intelligence or to their charisma. They're just as smart, just as charismatic, just as normal as anyone else.
But they changed it completely the root, because they were made to be these powerful, ugly, and bad creatures.
Originally. But see, some people like playing the orcs, and then those people get offended if you say, oh, your whole race is evil and stupid.
Well, I don't know how much this is bad or not, but it's very different because they completely changed their mind. And now it's different. But I don't know if people like. I know you don't like.
Some people like it, and some people hate it. It's a big controversy. Yeah.
It's a big controversy.
Yeah. You don't feel these images are offensive in any way?
No, they are fantasy things from the mind. It's not like something that is just on fame. Like,
she is speaking the truth. Orc is a fantasy creature. It's not a real world thing.
Yeah, like I said, it's just fantasy. It's something like you play on your imagination. It's not real. We don't see these creatures on the street. I hope I never will see them on the street. So I personally don't feel offended, but I know some people can, and it's okay. It's so different for me. But I understand you don't like, because it's changed a lot what the game is about. And like, it's hard when you like something so much and then they change completely. It's like when you eat one kind of food your whole life, and then suddenly they change the recipe.
They change the recipe.
And then you don't recognize anymore. So it's perde a graça. How do you say this in English?
It loses its essence. It loses its charm. It loses its attractiveness, its style, its spirit.
It's kind of frustrating for me, because if I'm playing a game my whole life and I love the game and they change completely, I'm sure you feel like kind of frustrated.
It's a weird game of who gets to be offended, because some people, even though it's a fantasy creature, they still relate to it or identify with it. So it does have a connection to something real to that person. And then they say, well, you can't tell me that my whole race or species is evil or violent or stupid.
Hi, baby!
But then other people on the other side of the argument say, no, you are the one who's being offensive, because now you're accusing me of being prejudiced, and I'm not prejudiced. We've never played it that way. They're just monsters. So you're the one who's being offensive.
I heard you said before that if they want something different, they can create a completely new thing, and not to change something that already exists. Yeah. They can just create it, something like if they want to play something different, they just create a new thing and let the other thing that already exists be there. Do you understand me?
Yeah. All right, so let me ask you this. If you are watching a movie or seeing a game or a book or whatever it is, and there's this type of fantasy creature that's kind of like a person. They're not a human, but like the orc, they're humanoid, right? They're like kind of human plus monster or human plus something else. And they're all dark-skinned, and they're all evil, and the heroes have to kill them. Does that seem offensive to you?
Just because the skin, no.
Yeah.
If they are bad, they are doing bad things, they are hurting people, no. No, because they are different, they are not even human.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I don't connect with these because they are no people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't feel offended just because the dark color, even so I have a dark color, dark skin. No. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for coming on my video.
Oh, you're welcome. I don't know if I helped or
well,
not.
It was interesting to get your perspective and your thoughts.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Well, I don't know about you, but I feel like a big nerd now, listening to my wife, who's an outsider to D&D, looking in at us, basically saying, these are fantasy monsters in a fantasy game. Why are you people getting so upset about this? I think she does have a point, but I also see that there's a deeper side to RPGs. There are meanings in there, and there are connections to very deep human experiences. I think it's an easy joke to make that we're just geeking out and being too big of nerds about this. But as soon as I start to delve under the surface, I do see how these archetypal creatures and these different motifs really are related to our own lives, to our own experiences. Personally, I like the classic orc better. I like the monster orc, and that's how I run them in my world. And if you are someone who likes the modern orc, the kind of World of Warcraft orc or the D&D 2024 type orc, just know that that is a more modern interpretation. It's a deviation from classically how orcs were monsters and the Germanic and Norse roots of that creature. It is an evil monster thing at its root. So the current orc is a change of that. It's a new interpretation. You have the creative freedom to make that reinterpretation or that remix, but people also have the right to argue against it. For example, take a look at this elf girl here. Now, this is not from Wizards of the Coast. This is from Blizzard. It's related to World of Warcraft. Now, this elf here actually is not an elf. This is an orc. Ha! At least according to Blizzard, she's an orc. Now, I would say this is not an orc. All you've done is taken an elf, painted her skin green, and gave her a little bit of tusks. That cheapens the meaning of what an orc is supposed to be, and I can explain my points as to why I think this is a more shallow interpretation, why it is a betrayal of the roots of this creature. However, if that is what you want orc to be in your game, you have the freedom to do that. I'm not going to go so far as to actually hate on you or to try to make you feel like you're an idiot. There's a difference between trying to tear somebody down and having a mature discussion with them where you try to make your points, where you try to argue your points. Well, I think that's all I have to say about this topic for the time being. I'll probably revisit it at a different point because orcs are a very curious and complex case. So I do think there still is more there that I haven't gotten to the bottom of. We'll see what I can find as I go on further explorations and quests of discovery with this creature in a different video. Thanks as always, everyone, and an extra special thank you to everyone who supports me over on Patreon. You guys really help make this channel everything that it is. Until we meet again, my brave companions, may your adventures be many.